Welcome to the Biz Show, sponsored by InvestQuire. And now, your host, Barry and Lisa.
Hi, Barry. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How you doing, Lisa?
It's a cloudy day out there, but I'm doing pretty good. Getting ready for the week and lots of exciting things happening.
Yes, we just finished up a holiday, and now spring has started, so we're doing good.
Happy Easter to everyone. We're in the spring season and the months are just ticking by as we're heading into April here.
It is. Well, listen, let's get started here. We're on episode 14, understanding due
Wow.
diligence, and a guide for both buyers and sellers.
What a great topic.
Yeah, basically, what is due diligence, right? So, we want to dive in and kind of explain it because it's a critical topic for us, for buying and selling businesses, and for owners who are selling, and for buyers who are buying. Due diligence is part of the process.
It's important on both sides so that they have a full understanding, especially when they get into a contract of sale, to understand their responsibilities.
Exactly. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to drill down on due diligence, what it is. So, everybody grab your notepads if you don't know. And we're going to dive down on the buyer side, but we're also going to dive down on the seller side and why it's important to both.
Successful transaction, right? We want everyone to have a smooth transaction.
Yes, we do. So let's break it down, right? What is due diligence? Due diligence is a comprehensive investigation of business before the sale, right? Or merger. And what do? We take the business, we put it under a microscope, and we analyze it, right? And we go through and we're looking at the financial health, we're looking at the legal standings, the operations, and the marketing piece. Those are the biggest things that we look at.
So that the buyer feels confident about their purchase and they understand that the value of their business is really what they're willing to pay.
Yeah, you know, um, we've talked about this many times in the past on some of our other podcasts about due diligence. So um, it is important, right? We might find something in the due diligence process, and that doesn't mean that the sale's not going to go through. It just means now that whatever we found is part of, the sale. For instance, we've had customers who omitted things in their P&Ls, and when we're doing our due diligence, we found those, and it does change the price because it could go up, it could go down depending on which what we found, right?
That's a great point, Barry, because us as a broker representation of a client, whether you're buyer or seller, we have a responsibility to do our due diligence in examining any of the records or documents that are presented to us by either party, either side, so that we could fully understand and help the client navigate through maybe doing further investigations or understanding what is being presented to them. And so that is also part of our responsibility as well. So we definitely have a part in examining a business and presenting the information properly.
Exactly. I mean, as business brokers, it's our fiduciary duty, and as intermediate mediator, yeah, we need to look at that stuff. We need to analyze it. We need to make sure that we get it taken care of and identified.
Absolutely. So you want to talk about the buyer's responsibility?
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about what due diligence does for the buyers, right? And basically, what it does as we examine various different documents, it allows us to uncover potential problems ahead of time, right? Avoid nasty surprises and to determine a fair market value. Now, just because we found something doesn't mean that the sale's not going to go through. It doesn't throw, the sale under the bus or anything. It just means that have identified something, and things might slightly change based off of those findings.
Well, you bring up a valid point because if a client is going to be, closing escrow because they haven't done their legwork or the proper due diligence of investigating the business, which encompasses everything from the documents to the neighborhood to the market, everything, every aspect that you could think of that we would advise you on what to research before you close escrow. the surprises that could come up after the close of escrow is really where litigation begins. And we want to avoid that for you. And so that's why, this is such an important piece for a buyer. Some buyers want to cut corners because they don't want to maybe spend the money to do their due diligence on inspections or whatnot, but it's so worth it. I mean, the money that you invest in finding out information could save you hundreds of thousands of dollars later. You do not want to go into litigation after the close of escrow.
Exactly. I mean, and we're going to talk about that a little further down the line about why it's important to hire experts and professionals that have done this day in and day out. We know the pitfalls, we know what to look for and stuff like that, right? We know how to do the due diligence, we know how to analyze the financials and what we're looking at. So, yes, very important. But it's just as important on the seller side too. And you kind of teed in on that a little bit in regards to making sure that you have all your ducks in a row, right? You have all of the financials in place. You've got all of your legal documents in place, right? You got a business license. That's, we're going to check on that. Make sure you have a business license. If you're an LLC, a S corp, a C corp, that you have those documents in place. And if you have those documents in place, your articles are there, so on and so forth. So that's all part of that process. And as a seller, what does that do? That makes you look legit.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, let's talk about the types of due diligence because there's a couple different types that we do, right? So there's the types that we look at financial documents. We're also going to look at legal documents. We're going to look at the operation itself and then the marketing. But let's drill down on those. Let's talk about the financial documents first. What are we looking at?
So financial documents would be something like the tax returns, cash flow analysis, balance sheets,
Exactly.
their vendor lists, and any debt that they have to pay. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. All their financial statements, including tax returns, and any debt obligations, right? If they owe money to whoever, so on and so forth. And that is really a lot of people say, well, that's all you need to provide, and that's not the case. I mean, that's a part of the business sell, but it's not all of the business sell, right? So that shows the revenue coming in, but how healthy is the business aside from the revenue, right? That's where we're going to look at legal documents, right? Those legal documents are going to be business license, contracts, permits, intellectual property, whatever the case might be.
Right. And some questions will come up along the way for the buyer. So we'll take that question to the seller to make sure we get a thorough analysis of these documents.
You bring a valid point up in regards to we as business brokers, when we're selling your business, we're going to field those questions first. And so the more information we know about your business, the better we can talk about it.
Exactly.
So the next thing that we're going to is operational due diligence, right? And what is that? That's looking at the day-to-day operations of the business, right? The management structure.
So like what
Yeah, that's
customer
part of it.
relationship?
Customer relationships,
Yeah.
management structure, your staff, um, uh, different existing supplier contracts, things like that, right? So we're going to look at the day-to-day operations, make sure that it's healthy, and you know, if it's not,
Yeah.
then we're probably going to make some suggestions to you of how to get it healthy, right? How to make it healthy.
Yeah. The buyer would want to tweak a few things, or they'll have some light bulbs go off where, they may want to improve some of the internal systems when they become the owner of the company. And so this is really a fun aspect of due diligence because then you're like really getting the inside view of how the previous owner or the current owner is operating their business. And then it could help the buyer envision, a way to expand that, what the seller already has in place and make it their own and customize the company. It could be the point where they could create excitement about becoming the
Exactly.
buyer.
Actually, we have something going on right now, this very moment, where we're selling a business. We got a new buyer, and we're actually presented to them opportunities to make the business better. Everybody's got a perspective, right? And everybody looks at a situation from a different angle, different perspective. And nobody's saying there's a right way and there's a wrong way, but there's an efficient way and to get it done. And that's what we're looking to and that's what we try to help the new buyers with.
Right. So the next one is market
It
due
is market due
diligence.
diligence. So what's that? That's
Analyze.
yeah, analyzing the competitors, the industrial trends, and the customer demographics. Let me tell you. Let me tell you a story.
Right.
I took over a company um, a few years, well, many, many years ago. But I took a company over, and my purpose was to really fix the company. It was flailing in the wind. It was losing money. So I stepped in, and the first thing I did is I had the staff go through, and we analyzed every single customer and whether they were a viable customer or not. We actually fired several customers because we were losing money on them and their projects. And you know, at the at the end of the
Oh, wow.
day, I said it. we the company became healthy.
Everyone says it. I hear it all.
So,
Yeah.
so market due diligence is important.
Well, that's good.
There are a couple different additional areas as
There
well,
you
right?
go.
Human resources, we want to look at that maybe if it's a larger company, and also probably the environmental impact that it might have, right? Um, Perhaps we need to look at those things, perhaps we don't, but those are kind of additional if needed.
So depending on the complexity of the
Yes,
business,
exactly, exactly.
yeah.
Um, let's talk about kind of a step-by-step guide for the buyers and for the sellers, right? For the buyers, what do we got? We are going to ask for an NDA.
We're sharing such confidential information from the seller to the buyer. So the NDA protects the seller's
Exactly.
sensitive information.
Also, we're going to, for the buyers, gather up all the financial documents, tax returns, and stuff like that. That's why the NDA is there. Uh, we would be conducting site visits. And then we're going to run the due diligence reports, present that to the buyer, and then, of course, negotiate and close the deal. Well, let's drill that down and let's drill down into that. So the first one would be the
Okay.
NDA,
So,
and why? Because of the financials that we're providing, right? We're going to be looking at revenue trends, profitability, cash flow, debt structure, maybe some hidden liabilities that are there, right? Some within the debt that maybe you have and you don't know you have, whatever the case might be.
so the reason for the NDA in protecting the seller's financials, Barry, expand on that a little bit more to help the audience understand, because a lot of buyers come to me and say, why do I have to sign this form? So we explain that to them because when you're really looking on the inside of a company's financial picture, there is a liability to the seller, whereas the buyer could take that information to a competitor.
That's one, yeah. They could disclose that in public, and this is a private company, so they might not want that information out there. Competitors could get to know
Right.
as well. You might also have some certain ways that you do things business wise, whether it's a service or whether it's a product that is proprietary. Maybe you got a patent or a copyright on it. So you don't want that secret getting out there. Think of KFC and their secret spices and all that stuff, right? Which is kept under lock and key. Nobody knows what those spices are.
Right.
So
Or have the buyer go out there and yeah.
yeah, so definitely we want to make sure that we get those NDAs in place. The second thing is then the legal documents, right? So you might not want in the legal documents there might be personal information if it's a sole proprietor, where the case might be. You don't want to make that public knowledge, right? And perhaps that owner doesn't want the public to know where they live or what their telephone numbers are. They have a business address and a business phone number. Nobody needs to know their personal information. So again,
Right.
where the NDA comes in on that piece. Um, and then, of course, operational.
Yep.
We're going to be walking in and looking day to day what's happening. and we want to make sure that we just keep it all under wraps, right? Disneyland doesn't want anybody looking
Yeah, you
behind the
might be
curtain.
meeting, yeah, you'll be meeting the back end of things, the management team, the employee structure, and things like that. So you don't want to be having anybody steal your employees or put a something poisonous in their ears as you're, doing a site visit or whatnot. So you have to be very ethical in this process.
You do. I had a past customer who was in the restaurant business. And, so I learned some things in that business. And now when I go to other restaurants, there's certain things I look at. And there's been times that I've looked at those certain things and turned around and walked out because I realized, hey, this is not a clean business and I'm not going to eat here.
Oh, wow. Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah,
then you'll know, right? If you want to continue on with your purchase or even make an offer on the company, right? You could
exactly.
tell maybe from all of this part of the process, this beginning part, just from signing the NDA agreement, you'll start discovering aspects about the business to know if it's even a viable company that you would like to own. And, you're saving everyone's time. So it's very important to go through this beginning steps of, like you said, drilling down into the company before you even get into contract.
Exactly. We don't want to waste anybody's time. And when we bring a buyer in, we want to make sure they're a viable buyer and that they're really interested in the business. I don't want to waste my time. I know you don't want to waste your time. And we definitely don't want to waste our client who's selling their business's time. So, we want to vet them and
Right.
stuff like that, right?
Yeah, and I do have a lot of sellers that are looking at me saying, I really don't want to hand over my financials, and I definitely don't want them to do a site visit. But if you look at it like an analogy of a seller that owns a home and they don't want to show the inside of their home, then how are they ever going to get an offer from a buyer? So that's where I try to educate and have the seller have a full understanding of the importance of this process, which is even before the offer begins, is you have to allow them to dive in and dig into all of their financials and really review it, because that's really, what they're buying. They're buying the history of the company and its success to feel comfortable about owning it themselves. So, it's just a really sensitive time, and a lot of explanation is needed to get them to release these documents. Of course, the NDA is required before they do so. But I mean, it's hard to get everybody to understand the process. And so that's what we're hoping, that you'll gain some more insight from our podcast today, so that you'll understand both sides of it, to the seller and the buyer side, and how it needs to come together so that we could create a successful sale.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And you get a good analogy in regards to buying a home, also about buying a car, right? You're not going to buy a car without taking it out for a test drive.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So the last piece there is the market due diligence, right? That's we're going to check the competitors out, the customer base, and the industry trends. What's happening in the market?
Absolutely.
Research current trends, growth financials, potential disruptions in the market. You know, who nobody saw COVID coming, did they? Um, that changed the market drastically.
Nobody has that crystal ball.
Yeah, but
Yep.
and we would consider that maybe a natural disaster in regards to business wise because the whole world shut down for a period of time. And so those are hard to see and
Right.
look at, but the things and the industry trends and the disruptions that we're looking at is, the stock market. It climbs, it drops, and things like that, right? And so does the business. Sometimes a business is in favor, and other time business is out of favor. So those are things that we want to look at.
Exactly. And it may take a good switch of ownership to get the business up and, ramped up again and successful. So it doesn't mean just because there may be a downshift that it's a bad business to buy. So it just has to be the right buyer, and their expertise maybe in that field or industry to get that business kickstarted and make it a success for them.
Exactly. So let's flip that upside down now. Let's talk about the sellers and why due diligence is important for those sellers, right?
Right.
So the first thing, and you and I've said this so many times, especially over the last few episodes in the podcast, you have to prepare early, right? If you're going to sell your business, you need to start gathering all your legal documents, all your financials, and all the information early.
Yeah, pretend like you're selling it. Every day that you own the business, pretend like you're going to be presenting the information to a buyer. So you make sure you have your I's dotted and T's crossed, and that somebody's going to be looking at your financials and they're going to be wanting to understand the value that the company reflects. So it's very important to keep your financial documents very clean and organized, and be able to hand it over to somebody. I mean, we have to do that for tax purposes, right? But you want to make sure that you're ready when it's time. You may have a family change or some, emergency in your situation personally that you're like, okay, it's time to sell the business. So you don't want to be scrambling. So keep it organized along the way.
Exactly, and make sure that's readily available, right? Because we're probably going to ask you for it several times throughout the process of the sale, right? So
Right.
I would get a binder and put all this stuff in the binder that you can put in the binder. Put that in there well in advance, and then make sure that it's easily available or provide it to us, and then we'll keep it in a safe, secure place, and provide it on an as needed basis, so that when we get a
Yeah.
potential buyer, we vetted them, we get the NDA, now we can share some information with them. The other thing is be transparent, right? So if you're transparent, potential buyers are going to trust you.
And there'll be less questions involved, right? It'll be
Exactly.
straightforward.
Exactly. And it could be real easy then to sell your business. And then if there are any concerns, address them head on and right away, right?
Yeah.
So make sure that, if something's out there, and listen, if there's an issue that's going on, that doesn't mean the business can't sell. That just means that there's an issue. Here's the issue. You can let the new owner know, hey, this is an issue. It needs to be addressed. And at least now they're aware of it. And when they take the business over, they can dive and jump right in. That's not necessarily going to change,
Mhm.
that the business isn't for sale anymore.
Right.
Let's talk about mistakes, due diligence mistakes, because there are some that could be very costly.
That would be what? Buyers not willing to do the due diligence process or just skipping over it due to a
Exactly.
lack of guidance from not having a representative, like a broker, walking them through the process perhaps, or not knowing that those, you know, documents are available to them and not asking for them. That could be a disaster, right?
It would absolutely be a disaster, and you hit upon it right at the top of this episode, right? We want to make sure that you do use a qualified business broker and somebody to do the due diligence, so that they find all these things, because there are a lot of things that can come out of the due diligence process that you would never think of, right? Again, the analogy of buying a car without doing a test drive, or how about buying a car with no engine in it, right?
Right.
Who knows, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get far with it. Um, and then the consequences for the sellers are, um, again, selling a car with no engine in it, or brakes, no brakes. Your reputation is going to be tarnished and ruined. It could really hurt the business moving forward, and you're going to lose all that trust from not only the potential buyers, possibly from us or anyone else that is looking to sell your business, right?
Yeah. And then a seller may be thinking that the buyer is definitely going to, close escrow, and they've already implemented, their exit plan and strategies of where they're going, or, moving is involved, and all of their components of the transition could fall apart if the buyer were to cancel. So you definitely want to do all this legwork up front so you know that it's a solid deal, before you start making your exit plans.
Exactly. I mean, one of the other things that, you and I both ask this every single time, but it's always good to know, why is the seller selling the business, right? Um, because that's part of the due diligence process, to know why they're selling it. But there could be consequences in that, depending on what it is. Maybe there's legal or litigation going on and they're tired of it. So does somebody else want to step in and handle that? Probably not.
Right. Right. That's usually a buyer's first question. Why are they selling? If it's such a great company, why are they selling?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So don't rush through this process.
No, don't.
Buyers and sellers should not. Right.
Well, let's clarify one thing, right? Due diligence, it's not a race, right? It's a marathon, right? It's you're looking and analyzing a lot of stuff, step by step by step. And in doing so, you're going to find things which is going to slow the process down, because now you have to investigate those things that you found. In the past, I've done mergers where we found some stuff, and it's taken time to figure it out. And guess what? The sellers, they didn't even know it was an issue or a problem. So in the process of the merger and acquisition, we found the problem, and fortunately we're able to solve it, and it actually worked out good.
Right. And there's times where, we're going to be recommending the buyer to present all the documents that we have reviewed over to their CPA or their accountant, their lawyers, or any business consultant that, they have a relationship with. We can also provide some resources so that they get a second, third, fourth set of eyes on everything, that maybe that skilled professional may come up with a question that could help us all out in discovering some area that may be of question in a business document. So I think that's helpful to the buyer, but also to the seller, so that they could say, "Oh, hey, that's a good point. Let me tidy that up for you, or explain that and give you more clarity on that." So you're not only helping the buyer understand whether they want to continue with the purchase, but maybe the seller maybe could fine tune their documents, present it in a new light that checks off that box in that area of question. So even if it doesn't work out for that buyer, it's now even more presentable to the next client or the next buyer.
You are so right on. Perfect. Well, I hope you guys learned something from this today. Lisa and I, we've are try to be as transparent as we can in regards to providing information to you about business in general. The last couple ones have been about buying and selling businesses. As a business broker, that's one of the many things that we do. Um, but we have other podcasts coming up that will be about marketing or sales or HR or finance. Uh, but we want to share as much as we possibly can with you guys, and make sure that you guys are knowledgeable going into whichever um, direction or endeavor that you're going into, that you have a wealth of knowledge with you. And if you don't, you know where to get it. You can get it from Lisa and myself. You can reach us at investquire.com. Also, and Facebook at the Biz Show. There's a Biz Show group out there. Feel free to reach out. We're looking forward to chatting with you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.